Hello, this is Taha.
This is Anaina,
This is Movie Masala.
and we're here to yap at you about films we watched recently.
And today we're doing
The Encampments.
I really believe they are brainwashed.
There was a very concerted effort by the media to portray things a certain way and refuse to discuss Gaza. Colombia is materially invested in the genocide in Gaza. We don't want our money to go towards Palestinian death.
So I'm pretty sure I've talked about at least 3 to 4 different documentaries on Palestine throughout the course of this podcast.
As You Should.
Exactly, and I think it's very, very fair. I think it to me, it marks a very interesting increase in the rise of documentary coming out of Palestine and
It also sadly still continues to remain topical, and in the best case scenario, in the best world possible, you would not want to talk about because there's nothing to realistically talk about. That is unfortunately not true.
Exactly. Right. So The Encampments is basically a documentary about, like the name suggests, the encampments from last year, the summer of 2024, specifically at Columbia University. So starting from Columbia University, and then it briefly touches upon how those encampments, which were the first ones, the largest ones, and I think the most heavily policed and reported on as well, and how that kind of spread across to other encampments, not just across the US, but across the world as well.
Yeah.
And basically it's directed and produced by Michael Workman and Kay Pritzker, and it has a lot of other producers, famous producers like Macklemore as well.
Fair enough.
It's a really simple film in the sense that it goes from start to finish, documenting exactly what happened, how it happened, the response to that, and things like that, including interviews and from the narration of 3 of some of the main organizers of the encampment, Sueda Polot, Grant Minor, and Mahmoud Khalil. And that last name must sound familiar if you have been following the story of his unlawful detention in March. I think what this film does really well is it, in the most basic and literal term, documents. Like I said, it goes step by step by step, saying how it started, who started it, what happened next, how the university administrators and authorities reacted, how the government administrators and authorities reacted, what was the response, again. What I liked about this film particularly was that it did all of that while still going back to Gaza and not forgetting that is the point of not just this film, but of the encampments itself. Because I think, and this is somewhat reflected in a lot of when people tend to look at the encampments, they forget that they were in response to something.
Yeah, 100%.
Exactly. They didn't just come out of nowhere. They not only have, this is outlined in the film very explicitly, like the encampments, they are something that have been age-old. They are something that have history. And especially at Columbia, it has history that is significant during the Vietnam War.
Exactly. I'm right now reading Bernie Sanders' biography, and he talks about as well Vietnam protests in colleges and universities. These universities have a long history. And again, the rhetoric you get right now with the campus protest is very akin to the rhetoric that was used then. This is like small tangent, but also comes back to, I'm pretty sure, the point of the film and the larger discourse surrounding it, where he talks about how the Vietnam War became one of the first televised wars in the US's history, and how the media didn't have a singular vision. And that's why the focus on the student protests was so large during the Vietnam War. It was not that the students weren't protesting other wars as well, but because on later wars, the government understood how the media reacts and how they were made sure to have the media have a very specific response when, again, the war in Iraq and everything happened.
Exactly.
And again, now you have cyclically, now with social media, you cannot control the media anymore. And thus you have the same parallels to the Vietnam War.
Exactly. So I definitely think that the film does a really good job of historicizing the encampments at Columbia, as well as making sure to repeatedly show the present situation of the Palestinians suffering and dying in Gaza. It does so by including interviews from Bisan Auda, who has become one of the leading voices in reporting from Gaza itself. And I think her interview is a really emotional and touching bit. And the film does a really good job, I feel. I think the film makes sure to give those bits in Palestine importance as well, which I feel like, I mean, it should be a given because, again, back to the point of the encampments are for the Palestinian cause. Exactly. They rose as a response to injustice.
Very specifically also, I'm pretty sure the people listening to this know this already, but it rose in very specific response to the university's
complicity.
Yeah, universities' complicities and participation in the genocide and how it helps reinforce the Israeli institutions that continue to help with the genocide.
Exactly, right. So I think that's the point I was getting to is like, and I think the specific focus on universities and the divestment call is, I think that focus is really, really important because there are at multiple points in the films like Mahmoud Khalil and Sueda Polo going, yeah, the university gave us a bunch of like offers and ultimatums and none of them were good enough. And they explain, and so does Grant Minor, they explain word for word why those offers were not acceptable to them. And then there are like videos of them holding assembly and taking votes on whether or not accepting that was fine, continue the encampments was fine, etc., etc. So I think spelling it all out makes a difference because, well, the people who are involved in organizing a university, protests against their institutions would largely know why they were doing that, right? But I think to put it in a film that is going to be in public release means anyone can watch it. And even if someone goes to watch it to further reinforce their belief that the encampments were a bad thing, when you hear that, you have no reason to go, no, but they're wrong. And obviously there are people who will go like, no, but like they're just exaggerating or they're just making it up.
The point of like trying to change someone's mind who comes into the argument being, I am right and you cannot change my mind, is a fruitless effort. There's nothing to be gained.
Exactly. So I think who this film is made for is obviously to highlight the hard work and insistence and persistence of the organizers of these encampments and obviously the people of Palestine. But also it is meant for, I feel, people who are on the fence about the encampments, who were like, I understand the cause, but I don't see why it needs to be this way, or I don't see why the protest needs to be in this particular form. I think that's who this film is or should be or could be targeting.
Got your point.
In the sense that, and I'm going to go back to what I said at the start, it's like, it's a very simple film. It is so easy to follow. And it is like the most, and this is going to sound like I'm criticizing it, but I'm not. It's a generic documentary.
Got it.
And people have had an issue with that in the fact that it's a generic documentary, but I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I don't think we need to be experimental with form or style or whatever all the time. When you're trying to tell a story that people have misconstrued so many times in the media, again and again and again, people have painted those organizers who are just students as villains and as terrorists, then I think having a narrative that is so straightforward and clear-cut is very important, I think.
Yeah.
Which is why I deeply appreciated them. And it was also really moving to see what students like me, like us, are doing across the world. And I wasn't involved in any of the organizing for distinct reasons. But I did make sure to, as I'm sure anyone who cares about Palestine would have, to get involved in any way possible.
Yeah. It gives you some sense of guilt, which is very justified in a sense as well. Because very honestly, the scale of the catastrophe and genocide that is happening, it should be a no-brainer to be like, I need to do something. That, again, no matter how small, it could be boycotting certain products or even just showing up. But a sense of certain guilt of I can do a bit more is not a bad thing to have. And I think a documentary about this cause making you feel like there are so many people who are doing so much, it is not a big burden on me to do little, is good.
No, for sure, for sure. Why I particularly wanted to watch this film was because in a lot of liberal discourse, the encampments are kind of seen as this end all. It's like, oh my God, okay, they're done. we're done. We did what we were meant to do. And it's like, no, the encampments were once again a response to something that is not ended yet. Which means that the kind of awareness and the kind of mobilizing that the encampments achieved or worked towards is not done yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this film is very cognizant of that fact, which is what sealed the deal for me on this film. It's like it ends with this note of like, there is still work to be done, but we still have hope.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's kind of negated with the end credits of like saying like Mahmoud Khalil is in detention right now, which, is completely disappointing and like very, very unfair and has the possibility of, diminishing hope for anyone. I feel like his last words in the film are, I have hope that there will be a free Palestine. When will I stop working? When there is a free Palestine. So I think this film does a good job of keeping it together.
It leaves you with a sense of there is a fight and I can fight, not that it is the fight, there's nothing to be gained and we have lost.
Exactly.
Because I don't think that helps anyone. In a way, it helps you feel like you can also contribute with that skills aspect as well. Yeah. Ending again on a positive note. I've seen this film do well in like the limited distribution that it has received. Like it has been consistently doing well. And that is again a positive show of strength, right? Of like, yes, this is quote unquote controversial, specifically in the US, I'm talking about as well. But the fact is, again, as you said, if you go in to watch it and you are not just fully on the side of like, there's nothing you can do to persuade me, then you cannot help but again understand the reason, causes, and be like, this is necessary and we need to fight.
No, for sure. And I think the film doesn't shy away from like the silliness of it all as well, because there's so many clips of like various white American like governors or whatever mispronouncing, not just governors, but like radio show hosts as well, grossly mispronouncing intifada again and again. I think if you're sat in that like cinema hall, everyone is chuckling at that point, which is also really heartwarming because it's just like, yeah, we're all here, we're all watching this for a reason, and we're all understanding the absurdity of what we're watching, but also we're here so that we'll all also leave with a little bit of hope. So I think, yeah, this is a great film, and yeah, if you can still watch it, I would say go and watch it.
So those were our thoughts. Thank you for tuning in. This podcast is produced solely by us with musical assets from Pixabay. If you enjoy this, please share and follow. See you again next time.
Bye-bye.